Guys, so today we're fortunate enough to be joined by CHERYL PHEONIX from the Black Child Agenda, and we're going to be discussing the school to prison pipeline. So CHERYL, if you can just tell us a bit about yourself, if I ask that question, who are you?
I am me, I am she, I am thee. Well, yeah, my name's CHERYL PHEONIX, and I started the Black Child Agenda back in 2011. My background actually is business. Myself and my late partner used to run a publication called the UK Black Links Business Directory for about 10 years, which was basically a black business directory, purple book. We had offices up and down the country. 25 staff members. Unfortunately, he got ill, passed away. But during that time, whilst I used to travel a lot and do a lot of public speaking, I found that my children were being put in isolation in school for no reason. And also the fact that they excluded like 16 young black males from his school and year group. And with my sons, they were unofficially excluded. That means that they weren't actually excluded, but they were not allowed to go back to school. And my youngest in particular was left at home for 18 months with no actual formal education. This was some years, this is like 11, 12 years ago now. And the fact is, at that time, I didn't know what to do, where to go. You know, you contact the local authority and all these sorts of things, and no one's giving you any support, any help. No one seems to know anything. So then after that, I had, Vic, turn on the light. Sorry, that is my son. So I had then been followed by The Guardian, I know, and they put out a double-page spread in The Guardian highlighting the issue and also talking about my case. And then things kind of just went from there. And, you know, my phone would ring with parents looking for support and help. And I shut down the business and started doing this full time. And literally full time it was, because I would average about 10 calls a day.
Yes. Wow. So tell us a bit more about your organization, the Black Child Agenda.
Yeah, so basically I set up unofficially back in 2011, and that was literally just me taking calls from parents, giving them advice over the phone. Sometimes I'd be on the phone for an hour, sometimes maybe 2 or 3, talking them through what they need to do. Wow. So for me, I basically went away with what had happened. I've seen a lot of kids on the road. They haven't been kicked out of school, but they're not allowed to go to school. But I also see them getting involved in crime, being groomed into certain types of lifestyle. I'm like, well, hold on a minute, there's something going on here. Something is afoot. Yes. So I took it upon myself to understand education law and the system around law in itself. And with that, I supported parents. I used to do it, I'll be honest, I used to do it for free a lot of time, and people would be like, you can't continue to do this. You're dwindling all of your resources. You're helping all these parents. You don't hear back from them again. You need to start charging because it is a lot of work. I effectively work as a solicitor, but I'm not a solicitor. I'm kind of glad not, because there's certain protocols you're supposed to follow. Whereas me, I don't follow protocol. I do what I want, when I want, how I want, but all within the greatest realms of respect. So the Black Child Agenda was kind of born in 2011. Well, didn't have a name. It was just me. And then I officially came up with a name about 2-3 years later. And I go into schools if a child's been excluded. So a parent will find me and they'll contact me and tell me what the issue is. And I will get their details and research their case, research the school, and then we'll arrange a meeting and go down to the school and shut them down royally and get the child either back into that school or in another school. So I deal with just basic exclusions, racist discrimination, hair discrimination, mental health problems, SEMH, autism, ADHD, go straight to the High Court if necessary. Have had teachers, head teachers have lost their positions sometimes because of the things they've done, blatant racism. Some of the things you see they write about our children, if you read one of their files, you think that you have just met the spawn of Satan. Wow. But when you actually meet the child, you're like, this can't be the same child that they're talking about in what they're saying. So there's a problem with systematic racism within the education system. And then I feel sorry again for a lot of our black teachers who have to work in this environment, who feel that they don't have a voice because they're being bullied as well.
Yes, that's true. I was just in a meeting with in a Zoom call with Dr. Muna earlier on today, and we're talking about issues around decolonizing of education, and it was around the racism. And this is something that's very apparent. I know there's a few, looking by some of the people who's joined this live. There's quite a few educators on this chat,
Yeah.
and we're talking about heads of years, and they've had to really comply, and they've found themselves in some really compromising situations where they've had to it's that balance. And you know what, this is probably where you, like you say, you don't business, you go in there and deal with them accordingly. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
I bet the schools will be quite fearful of you.
Yes and no. I think in the time I've done this, I like what it was quite interesting, because I have never been back to the same school twice. So once I've been there once, I either get two responses: they hate me and make sure that they fix up, which is great, or they continue with their actions and I have to go back, and then I'll take them to the High Court or get that head teacher fired because of what's going on in the school. So it's either or. However, last year must be the first time I've been back to the same school 6 times within the space of 3 months because of blatant racist discrimination, bullying, and all kinds going on. So then we have the other side where schools will then call us to come back and train or do workshops with their teachers to recognize conscious and unconscious bias. That's great as well. However, for me, that leadership comes from the top. So it's very well and good having your teachers involved in conscious and unconscious bias, which is definitely needed. But then if the head teacher himself is a part of the Nazi League of the UK, then it makes no difference, because he's still going to make sure the same dialogue that has been fed prior to the training is still there. I've been to schools, and the funny thing is that schools, the academization of schools, we don't have head teachers anymore. We have a lot of head masters or heads. That's it. They're head business people. Schools now are a business, and these heads don't care about your child who's got ADHD, or the fact that your family have died in the Grenfell Towers, or, I've dealt with everything from Leeds all the way down, to Devon, of different things that have happened in a child's life, and they don't care about Kwame or about Shanika. They only care about Becky and Karen, because those are the 2 trending names right now. So that's it. And they get all the support and all the nurture that they need, whereas a black child doesn't get that, where they see our children as older than they are, or that they're more mature than they are. And that means that they should be able to put up with or deal with what has been faced to them. That's being punched in the face. That's having your locks ripped out of the front of your head at 7 years old. That is going home at 5 with bite marks in your face, and a teacher sitting there. Oh, they must have come to school like that. And it's like, excuse me, what now? So this is the reality. I've had children who are 12 and 13 eating glass, incontinent, so scared to go to school, and parents don't know what to do. I have to go to work as a single mom, for example. I have no one to look after my child. I have no family support network. And this is the reality of a lot of parents, and it's like a war zone. And it's like, unless you do the work that I do directly, it's very, very hard to comprehend. A lot of people, when I spoke about the academization of schools and the sex ed classes changing, I was like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just saying this and you're just doing that. And then when they came in, parents are like, oh, right, they are actually businesses. And then when you look at, again, black teachers in there who see the problems with a lot of our children are having to face, and they try to speak up, they're hounded out of their job. So like you were saying, they dumb themselves down, they keep silent in the corner, and they have no outlet. But I can come onto that outlet a bit later, because we've actually set up an outlet for teachers, NHS staff, anyone in a particular work forum. We've got an outlet for them, so they're not driving themselves crazy.
Wow. Because you know what we spoke about prior to this, about this. Now, he said it's a private business. Some of these are private businesses. Some of these are set up as charities and everything else, but it's all about money. Yeah.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I can certainly say when my boys were when my older boys were at school, they were going through when they're at school, the schools are going through that transition of academy. That's when we seen that purge. I can't
No.
describe it as anything else as purge of our young black boys. They were getting pulled in. We were getting phone calls for stupidness,
Yeah.
absolute stupidness. And it's that whole so-called zero tolerance, yeah, when actually what was needed was a different approach. Do you know what I mean? And our kids were feeling like they were being victimized and they were being targeted. So as a result, their relationship with education itself changes. Do you know what I mean? So, you know,
Absolutely.
it's school's long, yeah, education's long. Yeah, so when you want to talk to them
Yeah.
about university or anything else, because of their experience that they've experienced through you know, secondary education, and we wonder why, yeah, why our boys and girls are doing so well, especially the boys are doing so well during primary school, but when they get to secondary school, oh, I can't work out what it is. These are the reasons why it's systemic. Yeah, it's
But then, as well as that, what you're saying, our children, like you said, gifted in primary, failing at secondary. The only reason being is like you have to look at society that we live in. Our boys are, oh, they're so cute. Oh, they're so sweet. Oh, they're so lovely. And then there is when they go away for the summer holidays, they come back, they're now 6'1", their voice is broken. It's like, oh, they're threatening. Oh, they make me feel intimidated. And this is the language and the narrative given out about our children, who is still that sweet one that you saw with the greasy face. Because you know what us black women are like? We're greasing up your whole face, you're dripping with grease and shea butter. You've gone to school in your blazer 3 sizes too big. And then now they fit their blazers and they're busting out of their pants. And it's like, boom, oh, now they're threatening. But it's like, well, no, they're not. They're still the same child. Remember, these are children that we're talking about. They're not adults, they're children. And it's so easy to criminalize them. And when you, like I said, when you read these files and you see, I've had 12-year-olds who have brushed past the teacher, and in their file it says that they're sexual predators. A sexual predator. This is the language they're using for our children. I've been to schools. There was one in Kent, a private school that a young black boy was going to, and they were playing British Bulldog, and the white boy jumped on the black boy's back, and he's gone like this and accidentally elbowed the white boy in the mouth. No big deal, you'll say, just get some water, you know, and get on with it. Oh, no, not for this boy. What happened to him, he was immediately excluded permanently on the spot, and the police were called to his house.
Wow.
Criminalization of the black child. So then even when you're dealing with teachers who don't like you, don't like your child, and your child is academically gifted, because at home they can do the work. That's the one feedback I've had from parents. At home, no, they're flying by. They're gifted and talented. You know, what they classify as gifted and talented, to us is perfectly normal. Our children academically do well once they're in that type of loving environment where you actually give a damn. If you're in an environment where you're left at the back of the class, you are not engaged properly, you're spoken to like as if you're on the bottom of someone's shoe, of course you're not going to engage. Why should I? As you said, your sons will say, this is long. If you're being disrespected and the tone used to speak to you as a child, remember, children ain't stupid. As a child, the tone has changed when the communication comes to you, or lack thereof. Because the one thing my sons used to get in trouble for was the fact that they'll put up their hand, they'll be ignored. So then they just started shouting out the answers, because they're like, I'm sick of just not being able to answer.
Yes.
So I would just shout out the answer, and then they'll get sent out of the classroom. I'm like, continue doing what you need to do. So all of these things play a factor. And to me, when you have particular types of parents dealing with our black children, it hasn't worked. Maybe a few will get through, sometimes the shy, but then I say that, no, not really, because I've had a lot of shy children who I've had to go and represent, who are prefects, never been in trouble, academically gifted and talented, but yet they're a threat to the school and society and wider society. They're a danger, they're violent and aggressive. And this little girl, tiny little thing, against these big year 11s, and she's year 7, that just paints you a picture of this is how they're describing our children.
Wow. And you know what, you touched on a point earlier on about the adultification of children. We've mentioned it in previous live discussions. Now, you know what, like he says, I remember one particular morning my son come downstairs, and that was the morning when his voice broke. Yeah. And it comes out, he says, he's in the kitchen now, and he says, do you want a cup of tea, daddy? And I went, listen, okay, honey monster, yeah? And that was it. This is where I can honestly say, from that moment there, yeah, when he went through the shoot up, when he went through the glow up after the school holidays, yeah, and his voice dropped, his voice broke, that was a real difference. That was a game changer. And, you know, oh, he's being aggressive, and you know, it's this, and they don't understand about how our, you know, how to interpret our body language and our tone and the way that we speak. Sometimes is straight up passion and interest.
After 75 years, you're telling me you still don't understand? Or is it that you've chosen not to? Because I've been in schools where a white child has taken a chair and licked down the teacher, spit after the teacher, swear, carry on, mash up the whole classroom. What happened? He's back in school the next day like as if nothing had happened. Like, this is the reality. So there's a clear divide. And then when they call parents into the meeting, oh, we're really trying to work very hard with you. We're so glad that you're so supportive of the school. But you're not supportive of my child. So if you're not supportive of my child, I cannot support you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get on the phone to someone that knows what the hell they're doing to come in and shut you down. And that's how it has to be. And I always say to parents, never, ever, ever go into a school meeting by yourself. Bring the whole street with you, if necessary. You dig up your grandma, you go find a dog from down the road, you bring everybody, and all have a huddle, and they have to find the extra seats, because every other community, when they're going to the school, whether they speak a word of English or not, everybody, grandma, granddad, dad, mom, auntie, uncle, sister, brother, cousin, everyone's in that meeting. And then they can't bamboozle you. But what happens when we go by ourselves? They will say a lot and it will go over your head. So you need the extra ears, and you need to make them see that whether dad's in the picture or not, that this is who is representing. It don't matter whether it's the actual dad. It doesn't matter whether it's mom, grandma, or anyone. You bring somebody or some people with you, and everybody. And then schools are now trying to say to people, oh, you're not allowed to bring anyone to the meeting. I lie, them I tell. Bring who you want to the meeting. Solicitor, barrister, you know what I mean? Someone from Mars. Bring whoever you need to, and you make sure, and you go in there with your notepad and your pen, or you go, before you go to the meeting, you write down at least 10 questions that you need to ask them. Remember that your child is in their care for 30 hours a week. So if they're causing so much problems, but I don't get these problems at home, he doesn't get it in Saturday school, he don't get it at church, he don't get it at the mosque, nowhere else is there's these problems. But yet when he's with you, there's a problem. He doesn't sit still. He's aggressive, according to you. Please define what you say as him being aggressive. Please tell me why my daughter has come home with scratches in her face and her hair pulled out, because her natural hair is distraction. Please explain. And by the time you finish with them, they will realize that you're not to be played with. But they'll still test you sometimes.
And you know what? It really is a case of dopping or if you're frightened. Yeah? Because it looks like, say, if they believe, say, they can get away with certain things, they will try it. They will straight up try it.
They do.
Do you know what I mean?
They will. They will. They'll go all the way. I've had it where literally going to court on a blatant racial discrimination case, literally the morning of the court, they can't, because they didn't think that we will take it all the way. And I always say to parents, take it all the way, because before you get to the court process, you have to go through the official complaints procedures, tier 1, tier 2, sometimes tier 3, and then to court. But if you don't follow those, they'll throw your case out. So you need to go through the procedures, which are long-winded, lose procedures regardless, and then take it to court. But make sure the one thing is evidence. You need evidence. You need to have your child's school file. Even if your child's in trouble or not, get that file, because you'll be surprised at what's in it. Then you'll be mad, then you'll laugh, then you'll be vexed, and then you'll cry. But then at least if you have to go for a complaint, they can't add any more paperwork, which is what they do as well. These guys, yeah.
Wow. And it's true, because let's face it, when you go to a school meeting, they're coming with their file. They're coming with their file, they're coming with the information. So you're already going in on the back foot. You're already quite emotional and quite stressed out anyway.
Yep.
So you do need somebody beside you to back you up, you know, because you often
you need the file, yeah.
Yeah.
You definitely need that file.
And you will get bamboozled. Sorry. You will get bamboozled and, you know what I mean, distracted. So you end up sometimes going into things that you may not want. making decisions that you make, you know what I mean, that you probably shouldn't have done. Do you know what I mean?
And signing things, the number one thing I have with parents is that they sign things and I'm like, why? Or they agree to things like managed moves, thinking that it's a good way for their child. And I'm like, no, 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 don't agree to that.
Don't.
You can, no matter what point it is in the school academic year, you can apply. If you're not happy with the school, apply for another one. That's all you need to do. You don't need the school to do a managed move for you. Just apply for another school, because a managed move is the last resort before permanent exclusion. And with the with a managed move, hey, it's like my money. With the managed move, yeah, that's the last resort. So if that breaks down in the new school, what they'll do is send you back to the host school. The host school 99.9% of the time will permanently exclude. But if you've left and applied for another school, so you're starting definitely fresh, then that way it's not so easy to exclude or get rid of the child. And that's what a lot of them want to do. And then they try, I know you're going to go into certain other things. So yeah, be very mindful of managed moves and make sure, like I said, don't go to meetings alone, because they're going to be in there 6-10 strong and you one is in there. And by the time they're firing on all cylinders, you've missed a lot. And then you're agreeing to sign away something that don't make no sense.
Wow, 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 wow. I've just had a Wake Birmingham, an organisation in Birmingham that supports young people in exactly the same way.
Yes, they do.
Yes, yes, those sisters are proper.
Absolutely, I know them very well. Hi, ladies. I don't know which one's on, but I do know Julia, and I can't remember the other one's name, but yeah. Yes.
So they made a comment around some schools will charge for the file, so parents need to be aware that this is not the norm. What's your views on that?
Some schools do, from anywhere from £10. I've heard some schools charge up to £60.
Wow.
To try and put parents off of getting the school file. So there are ways around it. I always find a way around it. It just depends on the language that you use sometimes, because it is a subject access request that you would put in to actually, and it's supposed to take up to 10 school days, but sometimes they say, they will say that it's up to 40 days. So there's ways around it. Sometimes they don't want to print it, so then they can send it to you via email and then you print it yourself. A lot of the times they don't put it in chronological order, so you're going to have to sit down and put it all out and then put it back into chronological order so you can read through it so it makes sense. But the key with the school file is that has everything they claim that they've been doing to allegedly improve your child's behavior. And then particularly with parents who have children with additional needs and they're not sure, a lot of parents are not sure what to do. I see my child is slightly different to his brother or sister, but I don't know what to do about it. Where do I go? The first point people go to is their doctors to get an assessment, and then the doctor refers them to CAMS. However, CAMS, which is Child and Adult Mental Health Service, CAMS in some boroughs have a 3-year waiting list before your child will be even seen to be assessed. 3 years. So anything can happen between that time because there's no assessment or there's no diagnosis. However, you can still go to the school if he is on the SEND register or she. You can speak to the SENDCO teacher, find out what's going on. They should basically assess your child by way of watching. They're not necessarily EPs, educational psychologists, but they can call for one. Before it gets to that level, there's a tier system that they're supposed to do before you get to the EP level. Individual learning plan, maybe taking out of particular lessons where the child can't cope, if it's too noisy, giving them timeout cards. You know, there's a lot of different strategies, getting them a mentor. I always go for culturally appropriate, but maybe some boroughs can't find the black guy or the black woman. There's a lot of things they can do, and then they will probably go for, if none of them are working, then they're supposed to go for the educational psychologist to come and do a review and assessment. Remember, you're still waiting for CAMS. And if you find that the school aren't cooperating, go to your local authority. You can either download the educational healthcare plan form off of their site, or you can contact them and they'll send it to you, fill out your bit, and then the school have to correspond and actually fill it out as well.
So you know what? Just going to move on now to what is the school to prison pipeline?
It's the new age slave trade, where it looks like we've been free, but we just can't see the physical shackles. Basically, the school to prison pipeline is just basically a system where the push out rate of black children in the UK is just like America. I coined the phrase about 10, 12 years ago when I first heard it when I was in New York. And I was like, rah, that's exactly what's going on here. And why can't no one see it? So then I started using it, and it's actually part of our logo. And it's literally the push out rate of the black child. So what happens is when they're in school, and the real bad part is that 68% of a lot of young people in the prison system have an additional need that has never been diagnosed whilst they were at school that could have prevented a lot of stuff. The amount of young people with autism improves. They're very easy to be groomed. They're very easy to follow what you're telling them to do if they're befriended easily enough. So that is basically your black child being pushed out of the school system. Like I said already earlier, being bullied, they retaliate, they're now violent, aggressive, they can't be in the school, they end up in a pupil referral unit. Pupil referral units are a hotbed, particularly in London and places where there's a lot of black communities. They're a hotbed for violence, they're a hotbed for grooming, they're a hotbed for all kinds of things. And it's not necessarily the children within them, it's children that come, or young adults that come from outside, knowing that these young people are vulnerable and grooming them and getting involved in street activity or carrying, whatever it may be. So that is one of them. The pupil referral unit, if your child ends up in one of those places, it's far less than 1% of children leave with any meaningful GCSEs. That's just a statistical fact. Less than 1%. So if you've got 1% of the population not leaving with any exams, I'm not saying that you need exams to get on in life, but those places, they don't do, the maximum that they would get is a C grade, even if they're gifted and talented. So with that, supposing that your child has become criminalized, or they don't turn up to go to the Peru, no one's really calling home, you know, and that's kind of it. They end up getting in trouble. Boom. What's going to happen after that? You're going to end up in the prison system. But the preventative could have been done whilst they were in year 5, 6, 7, and 8, let alone when they're in year, 7, 8, and 9. But they can't be bothered where our children are concerned. They don't. And I see it. If I didn't live it, breathe it, and see it every day, I would be convinced otherwise. But right now, as far as I'm concerned, this is deliberate. Because when you go to those places, the white children are getting out. You're going back into mainstream education, getting into private schools. Even still, I wouldn't say to parents to run for private schools there, because their racism is beyond, and they basically can do what they like, yes, because they're independent. So, it is really, and so the prison system, remember, they're private. The prison system in this country, the majority of the prisons are private. All of them will be by, I think it's next year or the year after. So they need inmates. You've got places in America where they're suing the prisons. The prisons are suing government because they don't have enough inmates, and some of those inmates are as young as 11 doing life sentences. Do you understand what I'm saying? For foolishness. And similarly here with the IPP laws, it's the same thing. And they're in there working for car brands, for clothing brands, making clothes and things like that. And then when they come out, they think they're going to get a job, maybe with the same brand. They ain't looking at your kid. Have you been qualified? No, but whilst I was in prison, I did work and I was the manager of this. No, sorry, you ain't getting a job. So what's that you going to do? Unless they've got the parents that can really rein them in, and I know it's hard, I've got 3 boys, rein them in to say, right, this is what we're going to do, then it's very easy for them to end up on the road, and then the cycle continues of that prison, home, prison, home, prison, home, prison, or death, which is one of the things that is a reality, unfortunately, in our community.
Yeah. Modern day slavery, this is it, and it's systemic. It's systemic, and they're aware they need a supply line, don't they?
And our children are it.
Yes. So what we got to do by the looks of things, we've got to be challenging. We've got to be challenging. We've got to be on it. We've got to take this thing seriously. It is mind blowing to think that yes, our children are being used exactly for that need. And you know what? When you check it out, I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of those people that are profiteering from these private prisons are those same people that are lords and sirs and MPs.
Oh no, but hold on, excuse me, they are. They absolutely are. Do you know how many government officials actually have directors of, have investment in, not only the prison system, the pharmaceutical industry? The amount of black parents that I keep saying to, take your children off this damn medication. Oh, I give them the no. No. So that they're dumbed down. Do you know what that medication does? The one thing when it comes to the mental health and well-being of our children and the drugs they give them, I have a diagnostics book, because if I'm talking to anybody, I need to know what I'm talking about. I have the diagnostics criteria book. And when you read through the diagnostics criteria for some of these things that they're saying our children have, you're just like, excuse me, what now? That means all of us, like ADHD, certain things like that. Not saying that it doesn't exist, even though the medication existed 60 years before the actual diagnosis, which was now called ADHD. So that's a whole nother debate. But the fact of the matter is that they had the tablets, and a lot of our politicians right here in the UK, similarly with G4S Security, Theresa May's husband is a director. He directly benefits from the new age enslavement of our children, as do most conservative leaders out there. You know, they got paid first of all off of our backs back then, and now they're being paid again off of our backs in the modern day, present day. So, you know, to navigate this within the education system, the challenging has to be happening. But for me, I put it back on us as a community. What we had for 75 years, we're here. We had schools back then. We had our Saturday supplementary schools. We had our empowerment. We had black men in our community doing certain things. We had the black women doing certain things. How I grew up was in that environment where my mum used to play netball, the guys used to do football, massive field, the women were down the end, the men were there, and us kids would run up and down. And then tutors, they come in, then pop on the fire. This was in our community centre, pops on the fire. The man then's playing dominoes, us kids are running up and down. That community, but that used to be me every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So I knew what time it was, and I understood that anyone around me, yes, good afternoon, auntie, good afternoon, uncle, so on and such like. Right now, they've closed down everything deliberately. It's not by accident, it's obviously deliberately, and our children are on the road. So then what do we do as parents? We now need to, how much church building you see sit down empty every day of the week? How many of them are sitting down empty every day of the week? There's no excuse. We have to take that responsibility to take back the power from the system of our children, because we see the deaths every single damn day. We're seeing the injustice in the school system, in the prison system, in every system. No matter where we are, we're seeing the injustice. But if we just keep sitting down bawling about it, it's going to continue. They don't give a damn. Same way how they used to rip a baby out of a woman's womb and stomp that back in then. These people ain't changed. Savages. So why would that change now?
It's just more overtly done nowadays, and it's done through law and legislation, and it's done through certain rules, and you know, they're still making money, you know what I mean, and that's it. So this is a heavy session, you know. This is a heavy session. If you don't know about it, it is a heavy session to know what the real truth is, you know. So you know what, I want to talk about the ways that schools may be coercing us into making decisions. So, you know, we'll be looking at issues around off-rolling.
The number one, that's what they did to me, effectively, but didn't. It is what they do. Oh, it will be easy if you keep them at home. Oh, we can send them to, and it's all unofficial, a college down the road or this place over there, which like if you have to look at the school structure sometimes, you've got the head teacher, and this is not unlawful at all, which makes it even worse. So I've been to schools where you've got the head teacher, the deputy head is his wife, the chair of governors is their daughter, and then you're looking like, this can't be right, but it is what goes on, and it's not unlawful. So then you have someone running what they would claim to be an alternative provision by his cousin, brother, whoever. A lot of the schools also know that they can pay off places like Ofsted, their best friends, their buddies from a long time ago. And it's like, so the cycle continues. So all these things need to be broken down. So what they do is they'll terrorize you and your child, threaten you with social services, which is the next, from since about 2016-17, the amount of calls I get with regards to social services involvement in someone's child at school, when there's nothing going on, there's no wrongs doing, but that's a weapon that's been used by schools if you challenge them. So what they do, the easiest thing to do is, well, we'll send them here for 6 weeks just to correct their behavior. It's almost like another facility. and then they get parents to agree. Remember, nothing's been signed, or they manage move them unofficially. Parents don't know, nothing's been signed, or they tell them to keep them home. So all of these different things keep them home to cool off, unlawful. They're not allowed to do that. You know, a lot of these things that are taking place are all unlawful, and they're getting away with it because parents don't know. They just don't know what to do. And it is so common. Like, it's more common than you would really believe. It is so common. And schools don't. And then the thing is, because there's nothing in writing, there's no proof that this actually took place. None. Just like we know, like, you know, corruption goes on. Can you prove it? How are you going to prove it in a court of law? You can't. Unless you can really say, unless there's like 100 parents saying, well, this has all happened to all of us, you know, at once. But parents are busy, so you don't really get that. But it's common.
Let's take our breather for a minute, you know, because I've seen a lot of angry faces on emojis on this, and you know what, quite rightly so, you know, but we're just talking the things as it is. Do you know what I mean? And what sort of tips can you give to a parent who's kind of going through these sort of issues?
Whoa, it's a long answer, but I was always say, get this child's school file. Yeah. And don't do anything over the phone. Do it all via email, in writing. I've had a lot of parents say, I'm not really good with the email. Get to know it, because right now we're going into the new age of technology, and you're going to have no choice but to keep up. Sorry, I'm just going to plug in my charger. You're going to have no choice but to keep up with what's going on by way of technology. Get someone to write that email for you, if that's the case. But you need to do everything in writing. Record meetings, i.e. with pen and paper, or if you want to use your phone to record it, you have to let them know first. Otherwise, it is, again, against the law to record someone without their knowledge, blah, 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 blah. So get the child's school file. You have to do that in writing. You write to the head teacher. Don't tell them why. But some people want to tell them the whole business. I'm going to take you to court. I'm going to do this. No. Stop chatting your business. Go and get the file. Do everything in writing. Never go to meetings alone. And understand, like, especially with children with additional needs, you need to understand what they're doing. Even if your child doesn't have additional needs, that file should log everything they say they're doing and everything they're actually doing. If they then say to you, oh, we give your son a mentor, you know, during the week. Okay, you give him a mentor. Is that mentor culturally specific? What is the mentor for? What are the mentor's outcomes? Can you show me a file about what the mentor actually does or doesn't do with my child? Please show me from when he started till now. How long is the mentor there for? Is it for 1 day, 2 days, for an hour, 15 minutes? What does that actually look like? Because they like to throw around these words of mentor and this, that, and the other. But where's the evidence and facts that you have given my son a mentor? I'm not talking about Mrs. Becky, who's waiting to retire, who has no cultural understanding of my son, who doesn't really care. I'm talking about an actual mentor who is qualified. When they try and say, oh, we're getting your child, you know, bereavement counseling, from who? Where did the bereavement counselor come from? Are they qualified? Do you understand? That's the first question you should be asking. Are they qualified? I need to see their paperwork. I need to meet this person. I want to have a meeting with this person. I want to know what they're going to do with my child, how long for, and what they expect the outcomes to be. So these are the questions that you need to ask in the nicest possible way. These are the questions you need to ask about everything they claim that they're implementing for your child. Write down a list, because you're going to forget when you get in the meeting, and ask them on each and every point. Don't let them rush you out the meeting until you're finished. The most average meetings will take about an hour to an hour and a half. I've had meetings for 6 hours because I refused to leave until, but that was with social services. I refused to leave until my questions were answered, and no one weren't going nowhere until those questions were answered. So, do you know what I mean? Make sure you write down everything and make sure that you ask the right questions. If they're claiming that they're doing something, find out who, what, when, where, how, where's the report, where's the qualifications. This person can't work with my child unless they've been qualified. And just to add another caveat in there, you do realize that in schools they're allowed to restrain your children as well. They can physically restrain your children. Now, who's qualified to touch my child? First and foremost, you have to be trained to restrain. And then when you're restraining, why are you restraining? Is there any CCTV to prove that you said that my son had to be, or my daughter had to be restrained for this reason? Why is my child bruised up? You know, there's a load. Why is it that all of a sudden my child's acting like a mad person, but generally they don't act like this, but you felt the need to restrain them, to restrain. And you've got some big teachers literally bear hugging some little kids. So you've got to be really mindful, and particularly children with additional needs, particularly autistic children, sounds, you know, they can't processing disorders, things like that. Teachers standing over children and shouting, and they freak out and will run, and they'll go. And then you've got a teacher trying to grab a 7-year-old and restrain them. Come on now. I've had them where they've pulled children out from under the table by his foot. A little boy, 8 years old, autistic, scratching out his arms with a pencil because he couldn't cope, and they just ignored him. So this is the reality of the pain that our children are going through, particularly with autistic children. They can't relay that back to their parents. Do you understand what I'm saying? So they're silently going through hell. And then you're wondering why they've changed, or why they want to grab onto your leg rather than going to the classroom, because they're being tortured in that environment. And if that was me that had your kids and did that to your child, you'll be coming to my house to kick me down. So why is it when these Beckys and Karens are doing this to our children, we send them back every single day to be abused? Come on now. So I still put it back on the parents. I always put it back to the parents.
Listen, one of my little boy's best friend got excluded from his school, 6 years old, right, after a restraint. After a restraint. Sis, let me tell you something. You see this restraint, yeah? Like you said about the qualifications, you gotta have certain type of, you gotta have team teach, price training, mapper, one of those qualifications for training. Let me say something. None of them had it. None of them had the training, so they shouldn't have touched it. Wow. But you see, by next week, everybody had the training.
You should have taken them to court.
Wow.
All the way.
Yeah.
All the way. Me, I don't run. I go from 0 to 1,000. There's no in between. We're not leaving it alone. No, we're going all the way. Because the thing is, because they get away with an apology. Oh, we're really sorry. No, sorry's not good enough. My child's traumatized now. I've got to send him counseling. You're going to pay for it to get over what you've done to him. You've basically beaten up my kid, so you're going to pay. And that's the energy I want from parents. You lot can't accept them brucking up your kid because they're what? They're qualified to teach. They're qualified to teach, not physically harm my child. So there's a difference. No, you will pay. And if that means that I'm depleting your resources by taking you through the court system, taking you through the tribunal system, and whatever else it takes, then so be it. Because at the end of the day, my child's life is worth more than whatever money you think that you are or you ain't getting. And then that way you will fix up and treat the next set of children that's coming through these doors better. Because it's not just about our kids. There's going to be children after children after children, and they're going to continue with the bad breed behavior because no one says nothing. So we need to start speaking out and actually taking action and do something about it. If you see my living room full of books about everything, there's nothing they can chat to me about, because I'll be like, oh really, I don't think so.
And you know what, you see the man thing, just to go back to that. So my son, after hearing his friend, even though it happened in another room, he can hear the distress that his friend went through. You know, from that minute there, the boy who loves school can't stand school. Yeah, can't stand school. Yeah, so after this lockdown, we got a piece of work now getting that boy back to school. But you know what? He'll be fine. He'll be fine. But there was other kids that were impacted because they've seen and heard the wickedness that what happened in that time. And apparently it was not necessary. It was not necessary for that young boy to be restrained at that time. Yeah, it was
But he was 6. 6-year-olds are tiny. So what on earth could a 6-year-old have possibly done? So then that's like, to me, as far as I'm concerned, that's like, for example, someone just beating up your kid. That's what it is. Someone's just abused your child, and another child's listening, and they keep, you know, if that was a Becky or a bloody Sally, oh my God, childhood trauma. Yes. Childhood trauma. So what makes a black child any different with the same trauma? And then having to go back to that environment where you've just seen something take place, you can't verbalize it properly as what it is. Then your child starts acting up because that's what they remember by being in this place. You go back to the place of the abuse, and you're going to start acting different. When he's acting different now, they're going to be calling you, oh, well, you know, there's something going with your son. We can't keep him in the school because he can't behave. We're trying all these strategies. Well, no, you're not actually, because what he saw and what he hit or he heard was enough to traumatize him, but he's coming back here. He may think that's going to happen to him. So it's like, well, no. And the good thing is that I find is that so many parents are like, we're not sending our children back to school. We're going to work it out. We're working this out to keep them at home and home educate. We're working this out to flexi school. We're working this out not to put our children back in these environments. And I'm just like, yes, bun down Babylon. We can open our own damn schools.
Damn straight. And you know what, talking about these Babylon schools as well, right? I remember going to, you know, the first day when you go and look around for the senior school, I looked around at my son's school, and I'm looking at the wing. And I have to call it the wing, right? Because I walked in and I was like, I was gonna swear there. Yeah, I think you probably know what I was gonna say. Yeah, but I looked up, and the layout of this you know, the wing, all up. You can see exactly what's happening, and it just looked like a prison. Just looked like a prison. When my oldest boy's school started now, and they went down and they changed to academy status, that's when they started putting bars on the windows. Yeah, prison. When
it's like a mental preparation. Remember, they use isolation. We put your child in isolation. The only place I know about isolation is in a prison, where they're in a room all day by themselves. No schoolwork, sometimes no food. What happened to my son was that no schoolwork, no food sometimes. It's 90,000 degrees outside. This was one of the hottest summers ever in the UK. But he had to keep on his shirt, his tie, his jumper, and his blazer. He wasn't given any food. And it's like he was stressed out about telling me, because at the time my husband was dying in hospital. So I was between the hospital, between the school, and he wouldn't tell me what was going on until one day he literally burst into tears of rage. And I had just got back in the country with my suitcase, got to the school and saw the head teacher outside. But what I wanted to do was run up to her and fly kick her in her chest. But I couldn't do that. So I had to speak to her, and all the kids were gathered round because I'm sure she could see flames coming out of my head. The way but I was still speaking cohesively because of the way why is my son in detention? Why was my son in isolation all day? Because of his shoes. What's wrong with his shoes? Nothing. He's had these shoes since year 7. They're allowed to wear trainers. Plain black Nike Air Forces, I don't know, whatever it is. Plain black laces, black shoes, nothing else on it. When me look Noah, the Becky, the Karen, the Sally, they got on white shoes with pink laces, illumination, green and all that. And I'm like, well, hold on a minute, go and get my Pitney. I was so mad, and she was very, very lucky that day. So, you know, things like this do happen. And sometimes I get, you know, when parents used to go down to the schools in the 80s and mess up some of these people, I actually get why. Because I was so close. And I have to, you know, you have to set that example. But sometimes, man, the ninja has to come on, and you just feel, because we're always getting beat on. We're always in the wrong. No matter what we do, we can't do wrong for doing right. We can't do right for doing wrong. No matter where we do, no matter where we pick it do, they must have done something. Why, Sally? No. How about they didn't? How about you guys are just kind of messed up in your ways, and you need to learn to treat our children better. Our children don't need to be in isolation. Our children don't need to be sitting down not having any lunch. Our children don't need to be sent out the classroom. Our children don't need to be dragged by the ankles from under a table because they're not coping, because their noise cancelling headphones are on your desk rather than on their head. No, this video going around with in the black uniforms. Trust me, daddy, in here. It's going to end up coming here, and you know, people going to have to learn. Going to have to learn today. But for me, I'm about our own schools. Definitely. What happened? You think it solves all the problems? I think it will help. I think it will help nurture a generation of children that feel loved. I think it will nurture a generation of creativity, entrepreneurship, financially literate children, children that don't go into an environment for 30 hours and come out traumatized, so that by the time they're 14 and 15, they're just angry with the world. And you see our children, they're bloody angry, they're peed off, and they're upset because they don't feel that anyone's listening, and they're back in these environments every day where they're just put on. And it's like, well, when is this going to be, when are we going to get a break? When will we get a break of us being, not only us being treated like this, but these are our babies that are being treated like this? Do you get what I'm saying? And it's like, nah, me, I will always kick down doors and break down barriers for our children, because it's not fair. It's not right. And that's how I see it. And I will get mad as hell. And like I said, I'll go from 0 to 1,000 to be breaking down that system, because I can't do it physically to each individual that's messed with our kids. Unfortunately.
Talk it. So you know what? It was mad because I was doing a lot of reading and listening and all kind of research around this. And I was thinking, you know what? You see this school to prison pipeline thing, right? It is more than just an educational issue, you know. Yeah, it is political, it is psychological, absolutely, sociological, financial, spiritual, and commercial. Yeah, so it's multifaceted, and there is plenty gains, and it's, you know, there is a lot of things that, you know, that has led that, you know, it's very complex how they've done it. And but you know what? It's today. It's like sessions like today that help us open our eyes, hopefully open our eyes, and get to consider what sort of things, and that there are organizations that can help. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, tell me about some of the ways that you may have been working with schools in partnerships, like or supporting schools, because I heard a bit about that.
Yeah, so basically one of the things, we've got programs that we bring into school that actually teaches the teachers about conscious and unconscious bias, because sometimes generally they don't realize. And I'll be like, where I've spoken to teachers and they're like, oh, they've not looked at it like that, but it's like sometimes it is unconscious that they're doing something. I know that might be hard to believe, but it's true. It can be. And it's like when you just give them a different way of actually looking and how they would respond to how they should respond to certain things. And then, you know, their biases, even towards the parents, sometimes it's not just the kids, it's like even towards the parents, their opinion about you as a mother or a father or an auntie or an uncle comes across in how they treat the child. So we do a lot of work with different schools up and down the country to actually deliver that, to get them to understand just you have to look at things differently. And if you don't, then we're coming for you. So either you do, or we'll play it this way. So it's one or the other. And there are other organizations out there as well doing a lot of work with schools. But my thing is really, really about how they treat our children, how the language that is used towards our children in particular is one of the things. If you see a child who's behaving a particular way, it's not because they're bad. Maybe they've lost their brother. Maybe they've lost their auntie or their uncle. Maybe they're grieving. Rather than just kicking them out, how about actually finding out what's going on with them? How about giving them that extra support? But you don't. You actually just label them. So that comes back down to the language. And even what you're saying about we're in warfare. We're in a war right now, spiritual, emotional, everything. And we've got to get our spiritual, particularly our spiritual armor up. And we've got to make sure that we're training our children to do the same. We've got to send them, if you're insisting on sending your children into these schools, you've got to send them in like they're going into battle. They have to be forewarned as forearmed. How many parents speak to their children about stop and search? I spoke to all 3 of my children at 8 years old, 7, 8, and 9, because they need to know what's coming, because you're a young black male. And until the systematic construct of racism and prejudice and all these things are broken down, this is a conversation we have to have. And it's the same like being in school as a young black boy or girl. We have to put the onus back on ourselves of training our children. You may be treated slightly differently. And this is the reason why. It's an unfortunate thing, but we're not all the same. As much as they say we live in a multicultural society, we live in a melting pot. I don't know whose pot is melting, because mine ain't. But I don't see that. That is not my reality. That's not my children's reality. If I've sent my son to the shop to buy bread, but he's got a police officer jumping on his back, that's not our reality. So it is very different. And I'm not saying that's for every person just because they're black, but just because you're black, you are treated differently. And if we're not arming our children to understand this and see it for what it is, then we're going to find ourselves in these problems. You can't do the same thing that Jack does all the time. You can't giggle out loud. But then even if they do, then call your mum. Because your mum will go and deal with them. Well, why? If it's all right for Jack, then it's all right for flipping Kwame too. You understand? If it's all right for Becky, then it's all right for Angelica too. So, do you know what I mean? But just make sure our children need to see that we have their back. Even if they're wrong. Trust me, I used to say to my son, tell me the truth no matter what. Even if you were in the wrong. My son, but particularly my youngest, he'll tell me anyway, yeah, Mum, I shouldn't have done it. I know I shouldn't, but blah, blah, this is the reason why, and X, Y, Z. I know what I'm working with. And then I can go down to school and then break them a new one. Sometimes, even when they're wrong.
And that's the key, you know. Really, you want to achieve it in a way that with your children, they tell you the truth so you know, so you can work with it. Whether it's good or bad, I want to know, because then I can do something to help protect you and keep you safe. Yeah, because you know the system don't like you.
And then it's like, because how they treat them is so different, 3 kids do the same thing, your black son gets kicked out. But from once your son or daughter tells you what exactly happened, then that's fine. Why is it only my son's been kicked out? There's still a reason to go back and fight that corner. Yeah, they admitted they've done wrong. They're children. They make bloody mistakes. They're supposed to. That's what children do. We can't expect them to, on one hand, be a child, and on the other hand, act like an adult. It doesn't go that. You can't have it both ways. They are babies. They're babies. Even my oldest is 29. He ain't 30 yet, so he's not really an adult as far as I'm concerned. They still need that. You know what I mean?
Of course they do.
People call me about certain things. They still, you know, they still need you as a parent. This kicking out at 16 and 18, that don't work for me. Not as an African woman. Hell no. No. Not in this environment. If we were back home, that's one thing. But in this environment that's hostile, we can't be kicking our kids out at 16 and 18.
Hey, guys. Listen, we're at 1 minute left, right? And I'm sorry for those guys. If you've got any questions, you might want to email or inbox Cheryl and take it from there. Is that all right?
That's cool.
Yeah. But listen, thank you. Maximum love and respect for coming on and burning down Babylon and talking the things then for the people there. You've been much appreciated and greatly received. Yeah. So